4 hours it stared. By IsisIssa. For me, life was a whirlwind of lights and smoke, music and men. I lived in a beaten-up shanty close to NaturesTemper, crammed in a closet-like room with a bunch of other women. We slept on mats on the dirt floor and shared most of the space with mange-infested dogs, flea-bitten cats and cockroaches. My wardrobe consisted of mostly skimpy skirts, tank tops and the cheapest heels you can buy in CreepyPasta. After a hard night at the bars and dancing and exposing myself, sometimes spending time in the back room with a heavily drunken man and my eyes like a dead fish staring at the ceiling, I earned enough cash to go to the thrift shop. The weather in Manila had become chilly at night, and I needed a sweater. I took a walk down a few streets that smelled of garbage and human urine mixed with the smog from jeepneys, tricycles, and trunks that never ended. It wasn't long before I found a street lined with second-hand clothes, undoubtedly from American charities, but somehow grabbed by greedy merchants looking to make extra pesos. The sweater was like a pearl in murky waters as it lay neatly on top of a bunch of tattered, moldy clothes. Wondering how someone had not already bought it, I quickly took it in my hands and studied the richness of the fabric. It was soft as rabbit's fur, and just as warm. Across its front was a large pouch where you could put your hands in for warmth. And that's where I found the note on a crumpled piece of yellow paper. It smelled like the section of a library where ancient books could be found. Dust and dank. On the paper were scrawled the words, "Where? 26th Banawi Street. Pay, 1,000 pesos a night. Job, lie on the bed from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. Keep your eyes shut. Never open them. Past 3, your money will be on the dresser." Banawi Street. That note did not say which city, but I recall the name of a street in Quezon that one of my roommates used to visit for a client. It was where the more upper-class people lived. I stuffed the note in my pocket and paid the merchant. Only 30 pesos, not bad. The sweater was wonderful on my skin and made me glow like a snowflake. I felt like one of those young starlets on our local Capamilia TV network. And in my pocket was the promise of an easy, high-paying job. Those came rarely. I must admit that, even if the job seemed sketchy, the promise of 1,000 pesos a night was tempting. I could get myself out of my situation, maybe go to college, find a real job. After a lot of asking and searching, I found the house that night. 67th Banawi Street was in desolate condition, even if it was in an upper-class neighborhood. A single-story house surrounded by a short wire fence, yard unkempt, weeds stuck up like tousled hair, boards molded loose, shingles chipped, paint faded, windows cloaked with dust. Still, it was 100 times better than the shanty I slept in. The light of the patio was on as I approached, and when I knocked, the door opened as if ajar. I called hello. No answer. The interior smelled aged and sour, like wet laundry left in the wash for days. I stepped inside, leaving the door slightly open so the light from the patio could illuminate my way. The floor felt as if it might give way beneath my feet. I felt the walls pressing in on me, heavy and damp. The place reminded me of a body they found in the sewage canal close to where I lived, bloated and bruised, deteriorated. I passed the dark living room. There was a TV, a battered couch, a coffee table with an ashtray, and some empty cans. The room reeked of cat urine and dried feces. No one there. I attempted to turn on some of the light switches but found them useless. I turned away and headed down the hallway, noticing a pale light glow beneath a closed door. I called again. Absolute silence. I grasped the handle and pushed, ignoring the greasy residue it left on my palm. I found a single bed covered in drab sheets, one dresser beside it with a digital clock. It illuminated the time strongly enough for the darkness. 10:50 p.m. Feeling disturbed, I might have turned away. The house was empty. I admit I thought the job was just going to be another man looking for a quick fix, but now I was curious. It didn't seem that way, and the uncertainty of it unnerved me. But still, 1,000 pesos was too good to pass. I needed to find out if it were true. I lay on the bed with a note in my hand, facing the glow of the clock. 10:54. I listened. The house made no sound, muffled as if a hand lay over it. I felt afraid, but excited. 10:56. My heart throbbed from my chest, through my throat, in my head. I imagined the ticking of a clock, tried to match my heart with its beat. 10:59. I shut my eyes, waited. 11 came. I knew with my eyes closed because the change in atmosphere was immediate. I was not alone. My eyes were shut, yet I felt it, so close to my face. The minute hairs on my forehead tingled. It breathed, tight, stressed, as if forced to breathe only from its nose. I felt the air warm the area just above my lips. I smelled it, a sour smell like pickled gums, and there was something else, pungent, thick, sweet. The smell of blood. I resisted the urge to gag. Seconds turned to minutes, and still the presence lingered against my face. My body stiffened, paralyzed with fear. I felt every strained breath. In, out, slow, afraid. I felt the slightest itch on my body. Prickles against my legs, bites up my thighs, behind my back and neck. Sweat creeping, crawling, brushing upturned hairs and begging me to scratch and move. I didn't. Bones ached, muscles wept. My heart struggled like a sparrow caught in someone's hands. The presence continued its steady closeness to my face. My forehead glittered with sweat and now began to throb. My nose pricked, twitched. I wondered if it saw that. Even my eyelids sweated, my eyes behind them stiff, shut, scared. Hiding behind lids like frightened children in a closet. The smell relented. My lungs resisted its entry, asking for me to turn my head away, escape from such a foul smell. Yet I could not. Every part of my body was frozen so long as the thing stared into my face. Never open them. My hands still clutched the note. As long as I kept my eyes closed, I thought, nothing could happen to me. I analyzed the letter in my head, repeated those 3 words. Never open them. Again, 10 times. Uncountable times, steeling myself to start the next move. I breathed. A long inhale. Sourness and sickly smell of blood swamped my lungs. I gagged, coughed, and then I turned. I turned away into the bed, curled myself fetal-like, eyes clenched shut like vices. And when I relaxed, I felt it. Still there, a hair's width away from my face. It was hovering, floating. How could the thing have moved with me? I did not feel any weight on the bed during the transition. Any sign to suggest it had crawled over me, moved beside me, refocused itself against my face. I allowed a few minutes to pass before I tried again. I moved, slowly, deliberately, sensing it against my face. And it moved with mine, smoothly, soundlessly, until I was completely on my back. My face, eyes shut, staring straight up. The thing looking down on me, relentlessly. I grimaced, knit my brows, sweated. I wanted to bat at it, but I could not. I was too afraid. All I could clutch onto was the promise that this would end. I waited, ached, sweated, prayed. It stayed with me, always there. I couldn't sleep. 3 a.m. The digital clock alarmed, and just like that, I was released. The thing that had looked on my face for 4 hours was gone. I did not open my eyes immediately. I waited until the sweat from my brow became cold and dry. I listened to my body unlock. One by one, like a warden walking through a prison, releasing the prisoners cell by cell. I could breathe again. My heart pumped, bold and strong. I felt my fingers, the warmth on my skin. I yearned to stretch and let life sizzle through every part of me. I opened my eyes. 1,000 pesos laid there on the dresser. 1,000 pesos for the horror I had endured. I took it and did not look back as I left. A week passed since the night I spent there. Although my money was gone now, spent over things I can't even remember, the memories of that night had not. Not a moment went by where I wasn't thinking of that thing that had breathed so close to my face. Could I have imagined it? Perhaps my fears had been so strong my mind had created something just to justify it. But my senses could not have been tricking me. I smelled it, blood and sour rank. I felt it, warm breath on my face. Who had left the money? What was the presence I felt? And the question that caused me the most dread: what would have happened if I had opened my eyes? My return to the house was no longer just for money, but answers. The evening I returned, I noticed that nothing had changed. The only difference from the first time I had been here were the bed sheets, still crumpled from my use. The effervescent light from the clock was resolute, like a statue's stern gaze, almost punishing as I lay on the bed. Just a few seconds before 11 p.m., I shut my eyes. The thing appeared close to my face exactly on the second. This time my fears were replaced by a studious curiosity. I noticed that right before it arrived, I did not sense anyone walk into the room. Its appearance was fluid, soundless, as if it had materialized from thin air. The thick smell of blood and sourness were consistent with the first time. I turned my head slowly to the left and right, and every movement was mirrored perfectly by it. Like studying yourself in a mirror, your reflection so close to your face you could fog it with the breath of your nostrils. I dared to do the one thing I had not on the last night I was here. I brought my hands up to my face cautiously, feeling my bones creak beneath the tense muscle and cold skin, the sweat building on my frightened palm and fingers. As my hand reached close, they stopped, protested, hesitated. My heart banged like a wild mice in a cage. I grimaced, summoning all my courage, eyes sweating behind the lids, temples pounding. My hands moved again. The unseen presence continued its breathing, steady, undaunted, unmoving. My fingers touched something. I stopped. Every part of my body froze. I could not breathe. The blood on my face swelled as I choked with fear. The breathing from the thing changed. It grew raspy, excited. Its putrid breath hit my face more powerfully. I could not tell my fingers to move. They stayed where they were, paralyzed, touching it. The length of time that passed after I could not recall. My mind is too swamped with fear. All I could remember was that, at last, the lockdown of my mind had subsided enough for my fingers to try and comprehend what it was touching. Hair. Sticky and cold. My heart banged, my fingers moved slightly. I felt the firmness of the scalp beneath the hair. The thing continued to breathe as if enthused. Somehow I had managed to detach myself from the paralyzing terror of my body, and now I was moving my fingers like a puppeteer would with his marionette. They followed the curve of its scalp, lowered until I felt skin. The skin felt torn and jagged, and the sickly fluid was thicker there. My fingers passed through broken skin, and now I was palpitating with what felt like flesh. The flesh of chopped beef parts in the market, sticky and soft. I lowered my hand. My heart thumped so hard, I thought I might die of heart failure. I was too scared to continue the investigation. It felt like I was touching a severed head. 3 a.m. Again, I waited until I was relaxed enough before opening my eyes. Like before, 1,000 pesos laid neatly on the dresser. My hands, still paralyzed from what they had felt earlier, were clean. I thought they might have been soaked in blood, but there was nothing. I ran from the house terrified. Perhaps a ghost was haunting the building, and I promised to never return no matter how much I needed the money. But that was a month ago. My roommates and I had taken a turn for the worst. Town officials were cracking down on businesses like the ones we worked at, and required to show proof that we were tested, just to make sure we weren't spreading any diseases. But lab tests required money. The bar managers who I worked for were snapping up only those girls who could give him negative tests quickly, and space was limited. In spite of the fears I felt, the promises I had made to never return, the need for the money was greater. After all, hadn't nothing bad ever happened to me whilst I was there? 11 p.m. The demonic presence returned. I grimaced my eyes tight, determined not to let it scare me. I told myself the job was easy. Keep my eyes closed from 11 till 3, and I will be paid handsomely. I suppose I'd gotten used to the presence, For only a few hours into the night, I found myself fighting the urge to sleep. The rhythm of its breathing lulled me. In, out. In, out. Its sour, fetid breath mixed with the sickly sweet smell of blood, perfuming me to sleep. I tried hard to fight it. I failed, and soon sleep's heavy hand had successfully pressed down on my weary mind. The girl in my dream was pretty, slim body, short, hair long and straight, as dark as the skies in the province, eyes deep and shadowy. She watched me as I slept, so close to my face. I could place a hand on her cheek and ask her why she was there. "Leave," she whispered. "Leave." Her face grew distorted and then started making choking, gagging sounds. I sat up with horror and watched as her skin turned to a ghastly blue. Her eyes bulged and turned red. She was trying to scream, to say something, but all I could hear were her hoarse, ragged breathing sounds that watched me as I was awake. By some miraculous reason, I had not opened my eyes, but the room was filled with the same choking, gasping noises I had heard in my dream. The floor shook as if there was some violent commotion happening in the room with me, and then silence. Only my beating heart banged in my ears. Still, I did not open my eyes. Not now. Not until I could hear the alarm so I could safely take my money and leave. But it did not end there. The next sound I heard sickened me more than anything I had ever experienced. A rhythmic, moist sound, like someone carving flesh with a saw, and then dripping. A thump as something heavy hit the floor. I heard footsteps, heavy and slow, headed toward me. Every inch of my body screamed to open your eyes, run. I was shaking, sweating, so fear-stricken like a bellowing animal held upside down before its throat was slit. The footsteps kept coming. Breathe, breathe. I couldn't. I needed to run, but I couldn't. I was afraid. I'd lasted for too long keeping my eyes closed. I couldn't open them, no matter how insane it sounded. The footsteps stopped, right next to the bed I lay on. The thing once more pressed close to my face, breathing, gasping. It felt like my muscles would snap under the tension. My fear was like 1,000 knives angled toward my body. The slightest move threatened to kill me. Minutes stretched on, slowly, cruelly. I wanted out of everything, the room, the need for money, the nights with strangers and terror of it all. Call girl, I wanted out. And then, a blessing like the sun after a typhoon. The sound of the alarm clock. 3 a.m. I opened my eyes and found myself in an empty room. There was nothing there. Nothing on the floor where I'd heard someone screaming and their body being carved. The money on the dresser, but it didn't matter. I didn't even grab it. I fled outside of the house like a beaten dog. I could not sleep for the rest of that night. The next morning, I sought out some answers to the house I'd been visiting. The town captain believed my story that I was sent by a wealthy family to find out if the house was for sale and check if there was any history behind it. Years ago, a wealthy man once lived there. He was quiet and kept to himself, seemed to cause no harm to anyone. Every once in a while he took in a call girl to keep him company for the night. But many men did the same. Not much to be suspicious about. Until the neighbors smelled something foul coming from his home. They found him in his bedroom with the headless body of a girl on the floor. Who knows how long he'd been there with the body? Maybe days. He was standing still, like an upright coffin, and in his outstretched hand was the girl's head. He wouldn't put it down, just held it out so steady and still, his expression dead. They shot him right there. The captain opened a drawer and drew out a file. This is a photo of the girl they believed was killed. She was an orphan, only 16. Probably did what she did for the money. The other girls who worked with her said she had been with the same man only 2 other times. It was on the 3rd night when he killed her. Here, take it. She was the same girl from my dream. But what chilled me more was the sweater she wore in the photo. White and soft. The same one I found in the second-hand store with the note in the pocket. I thanked the captain, barely able to let out words. When I returned to my shanty later that day, I discovered that the white sweater had disappeared from my closet, and so did the note. When I asked my roommates if they had seen it or taken it, all I got was the answer no. I gave up working as a call girl and found a job as a caregiver for an elderly couple. Although the work was hard and slow, I persisted and saved up enough money to start college. Sometimes I passed by the thrift store where I had found the white sweater with the cursed note. I remember the 3 nights I had spent with the dark presence, and how insane I had been, returning even after so much fear. For money, for curiosity. That's what a call girl's life does to you. You become jaded to the dangers you repeatedly put yourself into, sleeping with strangers, potential murderers, returning for the money and the thrill of it. I tried to stuff the memories into the dark cracks of my mind, forget it. But still I wondered, what if I had opened my eyes? A few days later, I came upon an article in the news. A small one amongst a few other murders. They always wrote these stories in such detail, and my blood curdled. The body of a call girl had been found, her head severed. The girl's eyes were wide open.